Hi guys, so I'm standing in front of a pretty amazing medieval building here. I'll give you a better look at in a minute, but it's a really good example of sort of late medieval Italian architecture, showing beautiful Gothic windows with tracery, very, very ornate. I actually don't know very much about this building myself until I go and read the plaque. But this is a good example of the kind of building that would have been around in the late medieval period at the time of the Medici, and gives you an idea of what a lot of the city would have actually looked like, because most of the buildings in Florence now are kind of 18th century and 19th century, but there are some of these purely medieval buildings standing around still. And you'll notice that as well as having figures around the side there, which are usually saints, they can sometimes be also patrons or heroes of the city. On many of these buildings, that I might be able to get some of them in the video, but on many of these buildings you also see plaques or shields, and these would have been painted with the coats of arms of the noble families who paid for basically the building of these buildings, or who owned these buildings. So I'll let you have a proper look at the building now, and I'll turn the camera around. So these windows here are probably early 15th century, I would say, looking at the style of them. So we're talking about, you know, the time of Fiore de' Liberi. These quite kind of pointed arches in there are quite a 14th century feature, but so these could be late 14th or 15th century, I would say. And then going up, we actually see that there are earlier style windows higher up the building. So this building as a whole is probably 13th, 14th century, and these windows here were punched through probably at a later date, I would say, probably 15th century, not much later. And then these elements here are 14th century in style. I'll move over to one of these in a minute because they've got some interesting details on. But the figures inside there are later, they're probably 16th century, I would say. So moving over. Here we go, we've got some nice details here of craftsmen at work. We've got some, what are they doing there? I don't know, masons it looks like. Yeah, they're making, so if we just see there, that's a column being made by a mason, and you'll notice just up here is a type of drill being used, and it has a kind of cord or strap wrapped around a drill bit, and he's turning to drill a hole into something. And there we can see the famous sort of angle with a plumb bob hanging down from it for measuring angles on masonry, and of course that's one of the symbols of the Freemasons these days. And this looks really weird. It looks like a man hammering a baby, but of course the baby is a sort of cherub, part of a sculpture, and that's the mason is actually carving him. And notice the guy behind looks like he's measuring some kind of angle or something on the back of the statue. Shield on the side, I presume that relates to a guild, and notice it looks like a wood carving axe, so just guessing, but maybe that's something to do with a guild of wood carvers perhaps, or something like that. And another axe on the side, or in fact maybe that is the Masons Guild, maybe this was a tribute to them. I don't know, I'm just educated guessing. So moving along a bit to the building here, and guess who that is? Yes, it's St. George, San Giorgio, killing the dragon. And there's the damsel in distress there, being very grateful for gallant Sir George coming along and slaying that dragon that's about, well, it's about the size of a crocodile, probably. And notice here is a shield showing a sword and a cuirass. It's an interesting cuirass actually because it shows the laminations of the fold, as it's called. The skirt is known as the fold. And then coming up here you can actually see laminations. It seems to be the back of the cuirass rather than the front. And this is perhaps an early kind of a sort of 14th century kind of cuirass, a development of the coat of plates, so there's actually overlapping lames. And we have the same one here. So, just guessing, but I'm guessing that this is from the Guild of Armourers, who show St. George and then a sword and armour in the shield. So I'm guessing that this is from the Guild of Armourers there. So, there we go. I hope that was some interesting details for you, and I'll see you at the next building. Bye guys.